We are on the play, so alright. Let's keep this hand so we can go turn 1 Serum Visions, crack fetch land, try to get some cards in the yard for this Tasker. Seems like a reasonable strategy. So the question is, do we fetch now to get a basic or not? I think we want to just shock ourselves here, even though if we're against an aggressive deck, we're going to be a little bit sad to have to take 3 right away. So here's a Serum Visions. We drew a second Snapcaster Mage. I don't know that we actually want this Delver right now. The land is questionable. I think we do want the lands. So let's top the land and bottom the Delver. And the reason being, we're doing this blind. We don't know what we're up against, so this is a blind Serum Visions. We may want to terminate this turn, and so if we want to terminate, then we don't want to be casting a Delver of Secrets. Well, now our opponent's suspending Ancestral Vision, so we're not going to want to terminate. So we're just going to play the Blood Crypt tapped. And it looks like we're in for the long haul here. Darkslick Shores could mean, who knows? Who knows what our opponent's playing? Could be a blue-black fairies deck. Could be another sort of blue-black control deck. Here's an Inquisition, so we'll see what our opponent wants to do. The Tasker can come into play next turn now, and our opponent can't take it, so we may just want to jam Tasker. We could also Snapcaster Mage, although we don't have double blue, so right now here's a Thoughtseize. So the Colligan's Command, though, is actually a pretty important card right now in our hand, so I wonder if our opponent's considering taking that Colligan's Command, but it looks like it's going to be Tasker. Okay. So there's a Delver. Interesting. So I think we actually just run out the Colligan's Command, returning a Snapcaster, force our opponent to discard a card. We could actually return the Tasker too. I like that a lot. All right, let's return the Tasker and force our opponent to discard a card. So now we've got Snap, Tasker, Delver, and we can always go Snapcaster, Colligan's Command even. So our opponent discarded a copy of Grimflare. So now we know, okay, here's an Inquisition, so that's going to presumably take the Snapcaster. Okay. But now our opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. And it looks like another Ancestral Visions just got suspended there. So I think we want to get this Tasker into play. So we can leave 1 card in a graveyard. Make it the Colligan's Command. And then we can also play this Delver. So not going to play the Young Pyromancer here because we don't really have a spell we want to play with it right now. So we'll see what our opponent can do here. It looks like it's an Ancestral Vision on 1 and then on 3. But here is a Tarmogoyf. So we can actually terminate that if we want to. But we're going to see what we get off this Delver. So we do not want to reveal a Young Pyromancer, so we will choose not to do that. Now, we can terminate the Goyf right now. That's certainly an option available, but we can also wait on the terminate. We can play Young Pyromancer and then terminate later. The issue, though, is that our opponent can crack a fetch land here in order to make the Goyf a 4/5, which is kind of annoying. That means that our opponent can block the Tasker profitably. Basically, they would both bounce off each other. So I kind of like attacking with both creatures here. So, gonna attack with both, and then go ahead and terminate away the Goyf here. And we know that since our opponent has only, well, doesn't have any cards in hand, that is gonna work. And so this way we're getting the pressure on faster, essentially. We could have played Young Pyromancer, tried to get a little bit more value off of that terminate, but since our opponent's drawing 3 cards the following turn here, I think this is the safer bet. And so we're playing against a Sultai deck, so we don't actually really know what's in our opponent's deck. We kind of have a general feeling, just looking at what our opponent's played so far. Alright, so looks like one of our Young Pyromancer is gone. Okay, but we still have another one. So let's see what our opponent does here. Certainly we would like for our opponent to have more lands in hand, but we don't know that that's the case. Looks like it's going to be an explosives for 1, so that's going to be able to dispatch the Delver. But the Tasker is still at large as far as we know. Our opponent doesn't have a removal spell for it. So we see Polluted Delta off of that Delver. So we can go ahead and play that. So we'll see if our opponent actually wants to go ahead and crack that explosives right now or not. But I think we just pass. We want to get some value out of our Tasker here. So I like going ahead, sacrificing the Polluted Delta here, just to get a basic, and then we can go ahead and activate our Tasker and try to get something back from our graveyard here. So it looks like Bolt and another Tasker ended up getting milled. And the reason why I do this now is because there's really no reason to actually give our opponent the option of giving us our Delver back. So now the Delver is going to go into our graveyard. But we're in a pretty good spot. The fact that our opponent is going to draw 3 cards on the next turn, it's a little bit worrisome. And that's why we want to make sure we get value off of this Tasker. So here's an Obstinate Baloth. That's pretty good because it's going to put our opponent at a significantly higher life total. But we can try to go Young Pyromancer plus terminate the Baloth here. And our opponent's got 1 card left. And it looks like Spell Snare. So Spell Snare is going to take care of the Young Pyromancer. We can, I think we still want to just terminate this Obstinate Baloth. And get in. Our opponent's playing a weird deck. It looks like a lot of different, like, one of here, one of there type things. So there's the Spell Snare. Hard to anticipate that one coming. But our opponent does have 4 cards in hand, so this is going to be a critical turn in terms of what actually happens. We do not want to see... We do not want to see our Tasker taken off the board, and that is what's going to happen. So that's going to set us back a reasonable amount here. That Maelstrom Pulse was annoying, but we have managed to get our opponent down to 6. So we have an Electrolyze in hand. That's some burn. There's a Mana Leak. Mana Leak, not really what we wanted here because in the late game stages, Mana Leak is not necessarily going to get it done for us. So there's a Goyf. That's going to resolve. Our opponent's down to 1 card in hand. So I think we want to just fire off this Electrolyze here, although it looks like our opponent might actually play something else. There's a Liliana of the Last Hope, so we're going to actually be able to effectively use our Mana Leak. And the Goyf's going to get up to a 6/7. So we can just go ahead and go after our opponent now. We have this Electrolyze. We're going to try to burn our opponent out if possible. And now we have a Snapcaster Mage, so we can actually go Bolt, Snapcaster, Bolt. And so our opponent's actually just dead here. Wow, so pretty interesting game. And we were definitely in danger of dying to this Goyf, but just gonna slam the Snapcaster Mage here. And now on to game 2. So we know we're up against a bit of a control deck here, so gonna board in accordingly. We want the Counter Squall. And the Painful Truce are also good. We can match our opponent's card advantage with the Painful Truce. And Desolate Lighthouse, it's a nice value land to have access to. In terms of cards we don't really want, the one of Collective Brutality, it's interesting. I don't think we really wanted it in a matchup that's going to go long like this. Lightning Bolt, even though it was able to close out that game for us, I think we can shave on Bolt, shave a Probe. The Mana Leaks also, though, we may not want, especially because we're on the draw. So if we were to take out the Mana Leaks, that would mean we would have another potential slot even. Engineered Explosives, it answers a lot of what our opponent's threats are, like the Goyfs, the Grim Players. So we are boarding in an additional land, but I don't think we want to take out a land because that land is a copy of Desolate Lighthouse. So let's go ahead and bring in the explosives and see how that works out. So this hand is fine. I'm inclined to keep it. We've got the Spell Snare, so if our opponent has a Goyf or a Grim Player, although more likely we would want to Spell Snare Goyf or even neither. But now we've drawn a copy of Delver, so I think we want to change our plan, play the Delver. If our opponent plays a creature, we have Bolt available to us, so we can just bolt it away, essentially. And it looks like, okay, it's just going to be a suspending of Ancestral Vision. So we get to see now it's a Spire Bluff Canal on top of our deck. I think we want to just draw that, not reveal with Delver. And we're keeping up Thought Scour plus Spell Snare. There's some argument to waiting to Thought Scour because of Delver. Just because we can look and then we can Thought Scour the card away that we find. But I think we're better off just Thought Scouring now. So let's do that. And now we're getting to the point where we have excess lands, but that's kind of okay in these control matchups. And alright, now we have another land. Alright, so Polluted Delta. So a little bit unlucky not to have hit here with our Delver yet. And we also have this Colligan's command, so we can use the Colligan's command to get back the Snapcaster Mage if we want to. Here's an Abrupt Decay. I think this is a good time to actually go for the Colligan's command, but if we do, it's going to leave our opponent the opportunity to resolve something. We'll just let it resolve. We're going to let this Abrupt Decay happen because we want to leave up Spell Snare. And we didn't see that much counter magic from our opponent. Certainly possible that more got boarded in for this game. And we also have another backup Snapcaster Mage, essentially. So we're going to see if our opponent can... It looks like our opponent's going for a threat here. Yep, there's Fulminator Mage. That's pretty annoying. So that can take out basically whatever land our opponent wants to take out of ours. And our basic swamp has already been milled, so we can't actually fetch for a basic swamp here. With that being said, I think we still want to sacrifice this Delta and get the Watery Grave. It sucks because our opponent can... We've only got this Blood Crypt left for black sources, so our opponent could technically run us out of black sources with land destruction. But we're going to have to hope that does not happen. So going to go ahead, return the Snapcaster Mage, and force our opponent to discard a card here. Really no need to shock the Fulminator. If our opponent leaves the Fulminator in play, that's good for us, but it looks like the Fulminator is not going to stay in play. So our opponent is discarding a Tarmogoyf. Okay. So we don't really even need to play this Blood Crypt yet. We've got Snapcaster Thought Scour available. So I'm fine with just playing Scald Tarn and passing. We'll see what our opponent is able to do here. But it's interesting that Tarmogoyf got discarded. So we know our opponent's got one more business spell in hand, and the Ancestral Vision is down to a single counter at this point. So we really want to start getting some pressure on our opponent with these Snapcaster Mages. And looks like our opponent's just going to pass. So hopefully this Snapcaster doesn't run into a counterspell, but it's certainly possible that happens here. But it looks like the Snapcaster Mage is going to come through, so we can now Thought Scour. Although it looks like, okay, here's a Victim of Night. So we could actually Spell Snare the Victim of Night, which is interesting. But we don't have to. Alright, I'm going to go for the Spell Snare on the Victim of Night, because we do want the Snapcaster in order to pressure our opponent. It does mean that we're not going to get the Thought Scour to resolve, which is the unfortunate aspect of this. But we want to start getting in the pressure. And, ooh, we see a Liliana, the Last Hope in our opponent's hand. So that's not great news. And if we had one more land, what we could do is we could go ahead and we could Snapcaster back the Colligan's command, but we don't have that additional land. So I'm going to play out this Delver and just play a Blood Crypt and say go. Hope that this Ancestral Vision isn't too bad for us. But our opponent is up to 5 cards now in hand. And there's a Goyf, so we could actually go Snapcaster plus Spell Snare the Goyf. But that would mean that the Goyf would resolve, or would not the Goyf would resolve, but the Lily would definitely resolve. We also have a Terminate for the Goyf, so I think that the choice is close, but I'll go ahead and go Snapcaster Mage plus Spell Snare here. Trying to get this game over with seems like a reasonable plan. Our opponent's probably going to go Lily, eat a Snapcaster, which is annoying. So, yep, that's going to happen. And we hit a Thought Scour, so that's a good card to have hit. We now have an Insectile Aberration. We can use Thought Scour on ourselves, which I like. And there's a Snapcaster Mage, which is quite a good draw. So the question is, now, do we actually go after our opponent's life total? We could bring our opponent down to 6, and then have Bolt plus Snapcaster Mage, but we don't know what's in our opponent's hand. I think the safest play is to get this Lily off the board, and we've got a ton of pressure going. So there's really no need to get fancy. Our opponent could have an Obstinate Baloth here. Yep, okay, so there is that Obstinate Baloth. That's going to resolve, and a Vision is going to get suspended. So we've got options. We definitely want to terminate away the Baloth. So let's just do that right now. And there's a Tasker. That's a great draw. So we can pressure our opponent down to 10 and play Tasker. And let's see, we don't really want the Thought Scours or the Probe. And yep, seems like a reasonable amount of cards to exile there. Still got a Terminate and a Colligan's command in our graveyard. Alright, Grim Player, sure, that can hit play. And now the question is, our opponent's down to 0 cards, so we can just go ahead and bolt our opponent, and then we can go Snapcaster plus Terminate right now, and then swing for the win. So, looks like that's going to work out. And yep, that is going to be the match.